most main characters do have transformations in most Hollywood movies, right? There's some growth. There are main characters who don't transform.
Why is it important for writers to start their story slowly and take their time with introducing the characters?
That's such a great question, because we need that time to be introduced to your characters to create that empathy that we talked about. Like, that's where you have the luxury of having a little bit of time up front to establish who they are, what they want, why they want it, and to allow us to kind of be introduced to their world and really get connected to them so that we're willing to follow them on the journey. And, that takes pages. I'm not saying you should spend 20 pages introducing your main character. You shouldn't, if you're writing a feature, for sure. You pretty much do need to kind of get to that inciting incident or that call to adventure pretty quickly. But look at Wall-E, that little character, we just follow him around in his little world, doing his little thing, and we learn so much about him, and we basically fall in love with him. And we will follow that little robot dude anywhere, right? And so, but we also get introduced to the world and the stakes in the world, and that there's nothing really living in the world, And so I think that's just a really beautiful example of visually starting slow and letting us connect to our character and his world.
And in The Queen's Gambit, I know we took some time.
Yes.
And the backstory wasn't always clear why she was in the orphanage.
Right.
And different things are revealed later, and it really
Yes.
keeps you, but why is she reacting this way? Oh,
Yes.
And then finally you see
Yes.
the conversation. I don't want to give away too much, but just little snippets, and it takes time.
Yeah, it takes time. And it also, as the writer, when you're starting to write, whether it's your pilot or your feature, it's your job is to create questions, not give answers. Your job is to create questions like, why is she, like you said, why is she doing that? What's going on here? So that the audience is we're just moving closer and closer because we want to know, why is she acting that way? Will she be able to be like a chess champion? Will she beat that guy or whatever? It's all these questions that you set up in the story is really what holds us to the story. And so, in setting up your character, you don't want to just tell us a bunch of stuff about the character. Maybe we see them do something and we go, that's weird. Why are they doing that? And we keep wondering that until later we get the answer to that question as we start to fully understand kind of who this person is and why they are the way they are, So yeah, you're kind of you're creating trails, breadcrumbs, and you're leaving blank spots. And one thing to think about too as a writer, which I think is really important, is to create ellipses in your story where there's gaps, where maybe if you have a section of your script and it just feels like da-dun, 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 here we go. Then she drives here, then she gets out, then, it's do a time cut. What's the next scene that moves the story forward? Let us, the audience, actively engage with the narrative to figure it out. Because the more we're doing that, the more interested we are in your story. So, leave gaps, ask questions, take that time at the beginning for sure.
Why is it important for the main character to have a transformation?
Oh, the main character. Okay, so let's be honest. Most main characters do have transformations in most Hollywood movies, right? There's some growth. There are main characters who don't transform. Forrest Gump. Does he change? No, he just stays the same through the whole movie. The early James Bond movies, James Bond doesn't really change. He's just getting the chicks and, bringing down the bad guy, right? So the thing to remember is it's not necessarily that your main character has to transform. It's that you need transformation in your story, because that is actually what's important. So, so if you have a main character who doesn't change and they kind of move through the story like this, what happens is they change everyone around them. Like Forrest Gump changes everyone around him, but he's still Forrest Gump, right? You know, James Bond, it's been interesting to watch him sort of evolve, you know, with the Daniel Craig version, because 9/11, like suddenly James Bond became like this wounded hero where he was always just the suave martini girls, you know, blasting off into space. Roger Moore, he was the one that I grew up with, Roger Moore. But it's been interesting to watch his character evolve, you know, and become more of a character that has a tiny bit more of an emotional range, you know, in the stories. But yeah, you know, transformation in a story is a key element, and whether it comes through your main character or your main character changing everyone else, it doesn't matter. It's just that transformation is actually the purpose of a story. It's actually the purpose of a story, because the reason we tell stories is to actually understand ourselves better. And that insight is a transformation for us, okay? So however you package your transformation in your story, have at it. You know, it's up to you. But the reason we watch stories is to be transformed.
So if someone were looking to write a Forrest Gump type scenario, maybe leave it for a few scripts down the line, because that was very specific how all that was done, and there's many timelines.
Yeah, that was a very complex script for sure. Yeah, it's easier to write a story where the main character changes, right? Because it's just clearer or whatever. But if you really have a character who doesn't change, who kind of takes us through the story, but really the point of the movie is how this person changes the world around him or her or them, then, you know, for sure, write that story. It's just think about why is that person the catalyst to change all these other people, you know, and how can they change the world around them, you know? Yeah.
Great. Yeah, I'm not sure with Queen's Gambit. I would say
she had a shift.
She did, okay. I mean,
not a huge one.
Right.
It's like, did she really change, you know? But I felt like she did, because I felt like, I don't know, I'm not an expert on the Queen's Gambit, but I love what Scott Frank did, because she's impenetrable in a way. Like, she really is impenetrable, you know, and the actress is sort of has that face that's impenetrable, you know. And at the same time, I felt like I got close to her. Like the mask was pierced by the end of the show, you know. Even though she didn't have this huge, you know, transformation like a lot of main characters do, but I think she did grow, and we pierced her mask.
We did, but she did feel like an engine driving, sort of, because even the camera movement, it would follow her up. You saw she was driving the shot.
Yes, she brings us into the world and the scenes. And she is very sort of like mask-like, you know, and she doesn't give a lot of emotion, and the character isn't written that way. And but I did feel that I was taken on a transformative journey, for sure. You know, and that's a tribute to Scott Frank's abilities as a writer, to be able to coordinate this character who seems at once kind of like opaque, and yet at the same time creates this feeling of transformation by the end of that show. We're just like, oh, I've had this journey. She has taken me on this journey, you know, with her, which was really great.